Well, good morning,
Mike,
everybody. I'll just go ahead and do some brief introductions. Casey Kramer, California Citrus Mutual. Thanks for joining our citrus focus workshop on the Marketing Assistance for Specialty Crops program. FSA is running this effort, and we're very thankful for USDA to making close to $2 billion available to specialty crop growers, which includes citrus growers. This is basically a sort of a direct payment. Many of you probably participated in the coronavirus food assistance programs or CFAP. The program, I believe, is being run very similar to that, and there is a short window to apply process. The deadline is January 8th. And so we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity for citrus growers to get on, to be able to ask your citrus specific questions with FSA, to speed up any sort of issues you may have, but also to learn from other citrus growers on what needs to be done in order to complete the application and hopefully receive a good portion of a payment relatively soon. So with that, we've got sort of an open meeting here. Everybody should be muted for the most part. We're going to have Jeff Sled at the FSA office give us a brief overview of the program, the particulars of the program. Then we're going to open it up to Q&A. Michael Bliss, our Director of Grower Services, got a few questions, but also if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you and make sure you're unmuted so you can ask the questions of FSA. So with that, Jeff, thank you so much for agreeing to come on this. I know your time is precious here recently, especially with all the things happening back in DC. So thank you for taking some time to speak with our citrus growers, and we'll turn it over to you.
my pleasure. I appreciate it. Again, I apologize for all the technical difficulties. So I'll just go over kind of the details of the program. I had a PowerPoint, Michael, that I sent to you. I don't know if you can pull that up. If not, I can just talk you through it. But the PowerPoint.
I didn't get it, Jeff, so I think talking through it's going to be the best bet.
Okay, no worries. So my name is Jeff Sled. I'm the district director for the Central Valley, so I cover from Kings County all the way up to Tuolumne and over to the coast. So the MASC program, MASC, M-A-S-C, stands for Marketing Assistance for Specialty Crops. So it's not a disaster program. It's a program that the outgoing administration has put out to help specialty crop growers market their 2025 crop, hopefully to new and expanded markets. So to be an eligible crop for this program, it has to be what we at FSA consider specialty crops. So it's got to be fruits or vegetables, no commodity crops like hay and wheat and that kind of thing. So obviously citrus, you guys, citrus of all kinds fall into that. So to be an eligible producer for the crop, you have to be in the business of farming currently at the time that you file this application. So that means you have to have a crop planted that you're expecting to receive a harvest from for 2025 that you will be selling. And you have to have an ownership share in that crop, right? Again, another eligibility thing is you have to be a U.S. citizen or legal alien resident, or an entity that is a partnership, an LLC, something along those lines. Okay, so the way it's a really pretty straightforward program. We're going to ask you to give us your actual sales received in either calendar year 2023 or 2024 for those specialty crops. So just the sales you received in that. So if you are, let's say you're going to use your 2023 numbers, it could actually be a 2022 crop as long as the sale happened and you received the money for that sale in 2023. That makes sense. So it is sales received in the calendar year of either 2023 or 2024. You can also include in those sales if you had any crop insurance indemnity payments.
Sorry, keep going, Jeff.
Can't hear you.
Oh, Jeff, we lost you. Stand by, everybody.
Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry. All right, so going back to the specialty crop sales, right, or sales that have been received in the calendar year of either 23 or 24, it would also include insurance indemnity payments or NAP payments if you have a crop that is NAP eligible, which NAP is the FSA's crop insurance payment for crops that are uninsurable on the regular market. If you don't have 23 or 24 sales because you're a new farmer in 2025, but you will have 2025 sales, you can use your expected 2025 sales, and there's a separate form for that you'd need to fill out. So if not, you're going to use your 2023 or 2024 sales. So eligible sales are sales of specialty crops grown in the United States by the producer. It includes sales of commercially marketed raw specialty crop. So the important part of that, so if you, as an example, if you have a farmer who grows oranges and then instead of selling those oranges, squeezes them and sells orange juice as an added value crop, you would have to figure out you'd have to take those orange juice sales back to what the value of the raw commodity, the raw crop would be. So your orange juice sales wouldn't be eligible, but you could do the math to figure out what the value of if you were selling the oranges themselves in their raw state, you would use that number as your eligible sales for any value added production. Okay. So the payment, the program will close. It's a very short window, so the program closes on January the 8th. No payments will be made until after the program closes, and that's because, as was stated a little bit earlier, Congress has set $2 billion aside for this program, and so we're going to wait and see nationwide how many people apply, and then that $2 billion will most likely have to be factored down to make sure that everyone who applies gets something. The payment, the program does have a payment limitation. No matter how much sales you had in 23 or 24, the payment would be capped at $125,000. So that's the most you could possibly receive. There are a couple of eligibility documents that you will need in addition to the application. What I would encourage all your growers to do is get the application into our office before January or by January 8th, because that'll stop the clock. And then we can work with you moving forward to get all the eligibility forms if needed. So one of the eligibility forms that you'll need is an average adjusted gross income certification. So to participate in the program, we do have an average adjusted income cap of $900,000. Obviously, this is a 2025 program. You haven't filed taxes yet for 2025, so the way we assess your average adjusted gross income is we look back, we skip a year, and then look at the previous 3 years. So for 25, we're going to look back, skip 2024, and look at 23, 22, and 21. And if those 3 years average out together to be $900,000 or less, then you qualify. But if you exceed that $900,000, however, at least 75% of your adjusted gross income comes from farming, then you can fill out a second form that we call a CCC 942. That is just you certifying, saying that, yes, I exceed that $900,000 average adjusted gross cap. However, at least 75% of my income comes from farming. I believe, Michael, I did send you over copies of the application itself, which is an FSA 1140. You would use that, the 1140, if you are going to use your 23 or 24 sales numbers. We also have a form FSA 1141 or 1141. That's the form that would be used if you are a new producer and haven't produced previously, but will have a sales in 2025. That's the form you'd use to calculate your expected 2025 sales. Then obviously we have that CCC 941, which is the average adjusted gross income. And then we have a couple of other eligibility forms that you would need. If your producers, if you have worked with the FSA before, you likely have some of these on file. But if you haven't worked with us, then you would need some additional forms, but our staff will help walk you through all of that. Like I said, the deadline is January 8th for the application. You're going to submit one application nationwide. So if you farm in several different counties or states, you would only submit one application in the county that we would consider your headquarters county. And those are kind of the big broad strokes, but I could answer questions if anyone has them.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your going over this. Like you mentioned, we have all the forms here. If anyone needs the copies of the forms, we're happy to send those out to people. The form links were included on the invitation and the agendas that you may have seen prior to this. So if you have that email that went out, those email blasts, the links are on the bottom of that. But if you need anything, we're always happy to provide those to you. So like Casey had mentioned, if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat on here. Or what I can do is I have a few questions that I've gotten from growers over the past week or so. So Jeff, I'm going to start off with a couple. Maybe this will get the ball rolling. The
Sure.
first one that we got is we had a question on the highly erodible land conservation and wetland conservation form. And people were maybe just kind of wondering what that was. Do you mind just walking through what that form is and why it's needed?
Uh-huh. So if you have crop insurance on your trees, you've already filled out that form, an AD 1026, which is the highly erodible form. What the form is, so to receive any benefit, any federal benefits, every farmer has to file that form, that them certifying that they're going to take care of the land in such a way that it doesn't erode away, or that they're not destroying a wetland. By and large, because you have a permanent crop as citrus growers on ground, you're taken care of by and large, because you have a permanent crop, so it's not tilled up annually and likely to erode away. But it's actually a pretty simple form, but it can be confusing to fill out. So if you don't have one on file, the county office can look that up and let you know if you do or don't. Like I said, if you've had crop insurance in the past, you probably do already have one. You might need to update it, but we can help you fill it out. But the purpose of the form is just to verify that you are going to take care of the land in such a way that you're not allowing the ground to erode away, or planting over wetlands or things like that.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate you providing that feedback. A couple questions in the chat. We'll start there. Fred asked, is it better to use the highest revenue years over the past few years?
Yeah, it would probably behoove you to pick the highest sales of either 23 or 24.
Cool. All right. Next question we got is, does packaging in grape bags, or does packaging such as bags, cartons, etc., would that be considered an added value? This is a question about grapes, but I'm going to convert it to cartons for citrus. So does the packaging, bags, cartons, etc., does that count?
If you get paid more for it because you've packaged it, then yeah, that would be considered value added. Again, what we're looking for is the value of the raw commodity. Yeah, if you're selling it by the pound or by the ton, however you sell, whatever that is. But like I said, yeah, if you package some, differently and get a higher price because of the way it's packaged, you would need to take that back to the raw.
Cool. Do you have to be an LLC or an S corp, or can you apply as like a sole prop?
Yep, you can apply as a sole proprietor. In fact, we're going to ask you questions to make sure that the right entity is applying. So, sometimes you come in as Joe Farmer, but technically it's the Joe Farmer Living Trust that's selling the crop and that is farming. And so we're going to kind of ask a few questions to get down to, who actually pays taxes for this income, the sales for these crops. Do those sales come? What tax ID do those sales come to or go to? So yeah, however you farm is how you'll apply. So yes, an S corp or individuals can apply, or it can be an entity. And just depends on how your farming operation is structured.
So to piggyback off that question, there's another one. Is it 125,000 cap per person or per entity? Do you mind kind of going over that again and making sure we're on the same page for that?
Yep. So it's $125,000 per entity. So if you're an individual filing, it's going to be $125,000. If you're an LLC or a corporation filing or a trust, then it's going to be that $125,000. If, let's say, you're a general partnership filing, the general partnership, you're going to file one application, but the $125,000 cap would be per partner in that general partnership. Now, your payment would have to be large enough to warrant that much payment, right? But you would be capped per member of a general partnership. And the reason that is done that way is because in a general partnership, the general partners pay taxes on that income, where in a corporation, for example, the corporation pays those taxes. So that's why it's capped the way it is. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Next question is, if you applied and received COVID money back in 2022, are those forms and that information, and they're already on file, do they need to refill out those forms, or do they just need to fill out some of the other different ones?
Yeah, so if you've applied for programs, the recent programs with us, some of those basic eligibility forms will be on file, most likely. The average adjusted gross income, or the CCC 941, that's a form that you fill out annually for us if you are receiving benefits annually. So even if you filled that one out previously, you will have to fill that one out again. But some of the other basic eligibility forms, if you've already participated with us, you may have those on a current one on file that would roll over.
To piggyback off
And
that,
the county office can help you.
okay. To piggyback off that, another question we got was, what if someone got money from another grant or something in the calendar years needed, 23, 24? Does that go toward, do we include that in the income section and revenue for those years?
No, you do not. So it's kind of tricky. Sometimes we use the word revenue interchangeably or income interchangeably. This is not the 23 or 24 number that you're submitting to us is not your revenue or total income for the year. It's very specifically the sales of those specialty crops. So program payments that you received from us, or like any of the COVID programs, wouldn't be included because that's not considered crop sales. The only thing that is included is if you have a loss on your crop in that year and you received a crop insurance payment, we consider that crop insurance payment sales of the crop, because it's money you received in lieu of selling that crop.
Cool. All righty. Next question here is, I understand the cap amount is 125,000. How is the distribution calculated, and will this be a percentage of sales?
Yeah, so it is calculated. So we take your total, excuse me, we take the total sales that you turn in, and then that payment it's a scaffolded payment. So let's say, just for round numbers, you had $1 million of sales, right? The first 50,000 or $49,999 of those sales, we're going to, none of these percentages have been set yet. Congress is waiting for the program to close to set them. But so for the first $49,000 or $50,000 of sales, let's say, these are just made up numbers, but let's say it's going to pay you 75% of first 50,000. The second 50,000, it would pay you 60%. The third 50,000, 50%, and then anything above $1 million or above would be a lower percentage. So it's scaffolded that way. As the way the payment will be calculated, and then, like I said, it'll be factored based on how many participants we have nationwide. They'll factor the program down to make sure everyone that applies gets something, right? Because it's a $2 billion pot, which sounds like a lot of money, but it'll go pretty quick.
Cool. If we started a new lease in 2024, are we eligible, and do we need to fill out the new producer form?
If you started, you would only be a new producer if you had never grown a specialty crop before. So even if you added land in 24, so you added additional crops or additional land for those crops, then you're not considered a new producer unless you've never grown a specialty crop before.
Cool. All right. Do you use gross sales of the crop?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So for us in citrus,
Yeah.
we'll have a pack out. So, say a grower gets a pack out, would you consider that a certified sale? And are
Yes.
growers eligible to use that for their revenues?
Yes.
Okay.
Just,
Uh,
just Michael, real quick,
Go ahead.
the sales number on that pack out, not the return to the grower, because it's different.
Correct. Correct.
All righty. Thank you. For an S corp, is it 125,000 cap per shareholder, or is it in total?
That would be in total.
Okay. Um, what if you have partner siblings who have other jobs outside of farming? Farming isn't 75% of our individual income. So how does that work if they're eligible?
So it depends on what kind of, if it's a general partnership, we're going to ask each of the partners to submit that average adjusted gross income. And so if, let's say there are 4 partners and one of the partners exceeds that $900,000 cap and they can't certify that 75% of the income comes from farming, then the partnership would get paid based on the shares of the partners that do qualify. So the one partner that exceeds the 900,000, his or her share wouldn't get paid, but the other partners' shares would if they do meet that 900,000. So, but if you exceed the $900,000 and not and you have outside work where that less than 75% of your total income comes from something other than farming, then you wouldn't qualify for the program. And the reason that is, right, because we are mandated to help small and mid-sized family farms, and so it's designed to help farmers that that where at least the majority of their income comes from farming.
Cool. If you are a producer of 2 specialty crops, say citrus and pistachios, I know some folks have citrus and olives, etc., does
Yep.
that involve filing separately or jointly on one form when you apply?
It would just be one application. You would combine the total sales of all qualifying specialty crops.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see here. You've answered a lot of the questions I have here. And I think we're caught up on the Q&As in the chat. So I do want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to ask any questions they have. You've answered a lot of the questions that I had already written down. So I do want to make sure other folks have the opportunity to ask questions if applicable. And I can pass it over to the team as well if they have any follow-up questions.
Michael, there's a few other questions that come in through the chat.
Okay.
I can see the questions in the chat. So just to confirm, the use of sales numbers from your packing statement are not the amount paid to the grower. So if you have some sort of statement that would, let's say you got paid for trucking the crop there as well as then paid for the crop, you wouldn't submit those trucking, the amount of money that you got, say, for trucking it there. If you do that, it really is just the raw crop itself.
Yeah, so Jeff, basically the way it works is the grower owns the crop, right? It just gets
Right.
transferred to the packing house. there's a sales number on that packing house statement, which is basically what the commodity sold for. That's the number that we're going to be using versus the packing house statement will have labor charges, things like that, that the packing house has incurred those charges on behalf of the grower, and those are just deductions from the sales.
Right.
So that's why we're
Right.
using the sales number. So
Correct. That's right. And then is the program tied to the budget being discussed in Washington, or is it's already approved? So now the only thing that could affect it, so the discussions they're having in Washington could very realistically shut us down. And if we are shut down, we could potentially be shut down past January 8th. So then it would be up to the new administration to decide how they're, are they going to extend the program, which is what they would most likely do. Once we come back, let's say we're closed down past the 8th, and they would extend the program out another, however many weeks to allow people to come in. But no, it's not tied to the budget that's being discussed. And yes, avocados are a specialty crop. Any fruit or vegetable, essentially, is a specialty crop.
And Jeff, just to add to that, you're absolutely right. A shutdown could affect the timelines of this program. There's also some discussions about adding the economic assistance part, and that there could be some additional funds that come to this program. With everything that's happening right now, I'm not very confident in that. So I think at this point, we're looking at, the 2 billion that's there, and
Yeah.
hopefully we don't have a long shutdown.
We have heard that, there could potentially be, this is not a disaster program, right? It's specifically for marketing of sale of commodity, of the specialty crops. But we could potentially, here in the very near future, sort of at the same time, stand up a disaster program for, we know we had a lot of 2023 and 2024 disasters that FSA hasn't had any programs that, response to those disasters. So we could have additional funding come out in that way. It wouldn't be specifically tied to this program. It would be in a separate program altogether. How soon after the program closes in January will distributions be made? So the timeline is the program closes January 8th. We as an agency have until January 14 to get everything uploaded into the system so that, at the national level, they can see the total numbers nationwide. And then they will be setting the factors and begin dispersing payment. I will say, even all of those eligibility documents that I talked about, you don't have to turn those in at the same time as you turn in your application. The application has to be turned in by the 8th, so it stops the clock, but you won't be able to receive any payment until all the other eligibility documents are also submitted. You have up to a year, up to January 8th of 2026, to submit those eligibility forms. But of course, if you wait that long, you won't get paid until then. So I can't exactly answer how long it'll be before distributions are made. They're wanting to turn this around pretty quickly, but I don't know how long it will take them to do all of the factoring and figure all that. If one person is involved in multiple entities that file separate returns, is the cap on the person or each entity? Let's use a corporation for an example. So if a corporation is if it's Joe Farmer Corp. or Joe Farmer Inc. that is actually the farmer, and inside of that there are, maybe it's Joe and his 3 sons, right? So there are 4 owners of that corporation. We're going to have the corporation itself, because it files taxes. The corporation is going to file the AGI, the average adjusted gross income form. And the 4 members inside will also file the AGI. So if, like I was saying, if one of those 4 members exceeds the 900,000, then the corporation wouldn't get paid that member share. So if you have a member that is in multiple entities, then he would potentially, the entities that are applying could potentially have their payment reduced by the amount of that producer's ownership share if he, as an individual, exceeds the 900,000. So if he exceeds the 900,000, every entity that he applies or that applies that he is a member of would also have their payments reduced by his share of ownership.
Jeff, there was another question that came through.
Okay.
And it's 2025 sales is estimated higher than 2024. What should we use the 2025 figure? And if yes, then how?
So if you have 2024 sales, you cannot use 2025. 2025 is only if, because you weren't farming in 23 or 24, or you had trees that were too young, that weren't producing in 2023 or 24, then you would file 25. But if you have both 24 and 25 sales, you have to use your 24 number. But if you don't have and you're going to use your estimated 2025 sales, you will have to turn in documentation to support how you came up with those sales figures, right? So I have a contract for 2025 where, I'm growing X number of acres and, my contract, I've been asked to sell, we'll be selling at this price. You'd have to provide some sort of documentation that shows that really kind of legitimizes those 2025 expected numbers. And we don't really tell you exactly what you'd have to turn in to provide that, because different folks could have different things that could support those numbers. But you would have to turn in verification of, how you calculated your 2025 expected revenue or sales number, sorry.
A question that came in here was, is it better to drop off to fill out forms to the local FSA office or to submit them online? Is there a preferred way?
You can email them in if you'd like. I personally would, if you can take it into your office, I would take your manual form in and ask them to load it while you're there and give you a date stamped copy of the automated form that we've loaded, just so so you have something in hand to prove that you filed that timely. But you can, if you work with a FSA, someone already, you have that email, or you can send them to me and I'll distribute them out to the county offices if need be.
Another question came in is, if you can you use 2025 projected numbers if you have a block of young trees really entering into the peak of production, but you did have 2024 income?
Mm-hmm. If you sold any 2024 specialty crops, even if you've now had an increase in production capacity, so you would have more sales in 25, if you sold anything in 24, you have to use 24 numbers or 23 numbers. So it's not for the 25 projected is not for a increase in capacity. It's very specifically if you hadn't been selling the crop prior.
Okay. I think my last question that I had before the meeting started was, if a circumstance where someone was in last year, maybe they just field juiced all their oranges. So basically they got no raw, they got it, not a physical fresh piece of orange that was at the grocery store at all. You want the production on the crop that was sent to juice, or do you want like the juice numbers?
So we don't want the juice numbers. You would have to take those juice numbers and kind of extrapolate them back to if I were selling this as a raw commodity, or as what would I have gotten for the it takes, I don't know, 10 oranges to make a gallon of orange juice. If I were selling those 10 oranges, I would get 50 cents per orange. I know those are crazy numbers, but that's we have to go back to the raw crop.
Right. I don't think I have any other questions. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Casey, do you want to add any other pieces of information?
No, just maybe give people one last opportunity to either submit a question, or if you want to raise your hand, we can ask the question. Well, Jeff, it appears you've answered all the questions. This is extremely helpful. I'm certain people will probably have more questions, and I know
Yeah.
your office is going to be flooded with questions. So thank you for taking the time. For everybody else on the call, we will make this presentation available online out to the memberships. So that way, if you need to go back and reference what was said, or you have somebody else that you want to distribute the information to, we're happy to do that. The other thing I'll say is, don't be afraid to call the CCM office. Michael or somebody else, we can make sure we get routed to the appropriate person. So, and if there's one thing I can maybe leave people with, if you do nothing else, make sure you fill out the MASC application, because the
That's right.
eligibility forms can be done later. So if you fill out that MASC application before the deadline, all the other stuff, you can take a little bit more time if need be. But so fill that form out, and then also give it your best shot. You can always work with the FSA office to correct anything that may have been done not perfect. So just make sure you fill it out to the best of your information and get that MASC application, and that way you don't lose potential eligibility. So
Yeah.
with that,
I
Jeff,
will say one more
else?
thing.
Yep.
So I know if you've participated in other programs, some of our applications can be pretty complex. This application really is very straightforward. We're asking for 3 pieces of information, right? We're asking for who you are, your what year you're choosing, either 23, 24, or 25 if you're a new producer, and then your sales numbers, and then sign it. That's really all the application is. So it won't be a difficult. The most difficult thing about it is you figuring out your sales numbers, which should be pretty easy from your packer, like you were saying. And Michael has my email address, so feel free, Michael, to share that with anyone that has questions, or if they want to funnel them through you, and you can send them to me. If you want to send applications to me to funnel out to the offices, I can do that as well.
Jeff, yeah, what we'll do after this workshop is we will send out this recording, a link to the recording with our contact information and your contact information, your office contact information. That way everybody has that. So, okay.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody's time. And um, uh, please feel free to ask any questions. I got one more. Jeff, you're from the Visalia FSA office. That was one question that came in.
Well, my actual office is in Hollister, but I oversee the Visalia office. So yeah.
There you go. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate everybody's time. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your time.